mean by good. Okay, so with that in mind, knowing what humanism is and what good religions do in the world, the next question I want to ask us to consider is whether humanism is sort of a candidate replacement. If religions are sort of entering a stage in their evolution where they become less important in the world, less widely adopted, as it seems they are. I'm not sure how many people in the room saw the study released by the Pew Research Center that was just published in last month, but it's very, very interesting. So the group that's called nuns, so N-O-N-E, not N-U-Ns, the nuns are so those who answer none when asked what is your religious affiliation. This group is growing rapidly in the United States. So in 2007, the Pew Research Center asked this question, and 15% of American adults were nuns. And in 2012, it's risen to 20%. So 1 in 5 US adults have no religious affiliation. And what's more impressive than that is the speed of change. That if it can go to from 15% to 20% in 5 years, then we might be surprised at how rapid change might happen. If you dig into the details of that study, you'll see what's happening is generational replacement. So the people that are becoming adults, the people that have become adults in the last 5 years, have even higher than 20%. I believe it's something like 34% among the people that became adults since the last time the survey was done. So the point of that, the reason I bring that study up is just to say that when I first mentioned the idea of sort of replacing religions, your first thought might be, well, they're not going anywhere, right? Don't you know, Andrew, that we live in the most heavily religious society in the industrialized world and so on, but I just want to remind you that it may not always be so. Okay, so the question is humanism a candidate replacement for some of these good functions that religions have provided? And my reflections on this question are, the first thing that occurs to me is not entirely, and we wouldn't want it to be, right? So we wouldn't want to sort of ask people to, like in sort of a Lego sort of way, like take out the religion block and replace it with a humanism block, right? We wouldn't want humanism to occupy that sort of central and all-encompassing source of meaning, and we wouldn't want it to be the exclusive source of meaning in people's lives and so on. That would just be, we would just be inviting humanism to become corrupt and to have all the same problems that religions have that we probably don't need to specify in this audience. So that's the first thing that occurs to me. So that's not the question I'm asking. I'm not asking, can people just unplug religion and plug in humanism? But can it be part of the answer, part of what people do instead of being religious believers? And the next line of thought I have about this is that in some domains, so on this list of things that good things that religions do, some of them seem more amenable to replacement from humanism than others, and so I have a few thoughts about that. So to start elaborating those, I think it's useful to lay down this idea of, like, how exactly is humanism different than just atheism, than just non-belief? And so to just walk you through my thinking on the topic, I have this quote from Sam Harris. This is from the talk he gave at the Global Atheist Convention in Melbourne, Australia this year. This talk is called Death in the Present Moment. It's excellent. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's on YouTube. And the gist of what he's saying here is that atheism by itself just sort of clears the ground. It doesn't, it gets some bad ideas off the field, but it doesn't replace them with any good ideas. And in Sam Harris's view, what fills the void is science and art and philosophy. And I sort of like that idea. I think science and art and philosophy all belong in the realm of better conversations that we can have once we free ourselves from religion. But I also find it somewhat unsatisfying in that it lacks a cohesiveness that would sort of facilitate some of the good things we talked about, the moral teamwork and community building and so forth. We don't see how those things would necessarily come out of a greater appreciation of science and art and philosophy, necessarily. That's not a clear connection to me, how we would all of a sudden start working together on moral projects in a much better way if we were better able to appreciate art. So it's somewhat dissatisfying to me as a description of what we get from atheism. Okay, so what do we get? I think what we get is just this idea of what exactly we mean by good in that phrase, good without God. What we mean in a humanist context, these are my thoughts on it, are that is simply the idea that human well-being and human suffering, and perhaps animal well-being and animal suffering too, are more important than other values. They're necessarily more important. So humanism is, to me, the philosophical underpinning of our ability to say, in some matter of conflict, that if we're making a trade-off between human well-being and suffering and anything else, say economics or nationalism or something else, some other value, that this one wins. Human well-being matters. Human suffering matters in a way that nothing else does. So then that sort of takes us to the question of, so if we take on board this idea, if you take on board the idea that human suffering, human well-being is a more important value, is the most important value, then where does that leave you in the world in the 21st century?